Breaking news. This just in from BOOBOONEWS. Biden-Harris has won the presidential campaign. Stay tuned and watch.
Before I get to some of these specific questions about what you've been saying and how in some ways you've been challenging the president as a fellow Republican, just first of all, for your reactions to this breaking news.
Well, I think it's terrific for the country. I've known Joe Biden for a long time. He's always had friends on both sides of the aisle. He's a very practical guy. People sometimes forget that he was a longtime chairman, not only of Senate Foreign Relations, but of Senate Judiciary. And that knowledge was in vivid display when he debated Paul Ryan in the 2012 vice presidential debate. And that's a measure of the depth that Joe Biden has. The other thing that I always think about him is that he's an institutionalist. He really is a man of the Senate. And I recall at least one instance when Obama was president, and Mitch McConnell was frustrated because there was a standoff and he didn't feel he had an audience on the other side. And he said, "Who do you got to know around here to get a deal done?" And then a light bulb went off in Mitch's head, and he walked across the street and did the deal with Joe Biden. So I think that's a harbinger of things to come.
Well, the president has also made several unfounded claims to the American people about fraud and corruption in the ballot counting. You've spoken out about that, even as state officials have debunked those allegations and made it really clear that they are untrue. But Mr. Trump continues to push this message. So what is your response, and what do you have to say about why you're so troubled by that?
Well, I think what the president said this morning is just beyond reason. And he's flailing around about Pennsylvania. He's lost that twice in the United States Supreme Court already. And he's just showing his bitterness. And it's the move of a small man. It's not the move of some broad gauge person. I hope he's enjoying himself on the golf course. But I agree with what was said earlier also, that we have to remember that just as Mr. Biden has received the most votes ever for president in a presidential election, Mr. Trump received the second most. So we have to consider the feelings and the opinions of those 70 million people who voted for Mr. Trump as well. Joe Biden's number one priority is to unite the country, I think, before turning to any single issue. And he's going to have enormous goodwill just by virtue of bringing this acrimonious process to an end.
Acrimonious about sums it up. I just want our viewers to be aware that when we were seeing that footage of the president, that's not in real time. That was him earlier speaking before journalists there in the Brady briefing room at the White House. But Governor, well, the president has been laying the foundation to contest the results of the election for months and has continuously attacked the security of democracy, of our mail-in voting systems, despite previously, and even in this case, voting absentee, voting by mail-in ballot himself. What does this tell us about the president's plans to contest the vote, and what does this mean for his chances at reclaiming the White House?
There's no chance of successfully contesting the vote. I mean, he took his people into Michigan. They said, "Your Honor, we have fraudulent votes," and the judge said, "Do you have any evidence?" "No, we don't have any evidence." And the Michigan judge basically said, "Give me a break. Get out of my courtroom." You would think they could come up with more than that. And, I think it's very important, as the president said this morning, that all legal votes be counted. And perhaps that fraudulent votes not be counted. So come back with some evidence of fraudulent votes and we can talk about it. But they've not been successful in doing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, President Trump has remained active on social media. Twitter has flagged several of the president's tweets since Tuesday for misinformation. How has the length of the ballot counting process impacted the president's message over time? And as a fellow elected leader, as a fellow Republican, what do you think his obligation is for how he ought to be speaking to the country in this moment?
Oh, he has an obligation to act like a grown-up. But that's a mantle that he has not yet assumed ever since he was elected president. So I wouldn't look for that to happen anytime soon.
Well, along those lines, the president has said he is not planning on conceding the election, even if he were to lose. You and I both know, and I think our viewers know at this point, that the peaceful transition of power happens regardless of whether the loser, in fact, concedes. But it does have an impact on democracy. It does have an impact on the pride that we have in our institutions. Do you think that the president will change that position for the good of this country? And do you feel like that will persuade his followers to move towards a sense of reconciliation as Americans?
Well, I mean, I think you're right that the petulant manner in which he's behaving himself today just makes it harder for everybody. We want to get this behind us and move on and unify the country for the good of the United States of America. But if you go all the way back to the beginning of my campaigns against President Trump as a libertarian, as a Republican, there's pretty good consensus that the poor man is a malignant narcissist, and he's only happy when other people are losing, and he's receiving praise. And I just think that's so deep-seated that it's not going to change. I think that as president, he has many skills and talents and very shrewd politically, but in the White House, he's the wrong guy in the wrong place. As I said back in the 2016 campaign, if only he could consider, some other business to go into, even the hotel business, but not president of the United States. He just was woefully unprepared for that. Unfortunately for the country as a whole, from moment one.
Well, you said just now in the White House, as it stands, he will not be in the White House come January, but he still will have a megaphone. He still will be on social media. He'll still be, I'm sure, in front of cameras. What role do you think President Trump will play in this post-period, not just what role he ought to be playing, but how will he continue to influence American politics and have an impact on the Biden presidency?
Oh, I don't think he's going to try to continue to rule the roost politically. What you say is true, but if I were Donald Trump, I would find it much more appealing to return to my varied business interests and travel around the just burnish that brand and spend more pleasurable time with his family. I think it would be not in his interest to say, okay, this is still my Republican Party, even though I didn't win, so I'm going to continue to tell the Senate what to do, for example. I think if he did do that, he might find that the welcome had been worn somewhat thin. I mean, I've said for a while that I thought if and when the president does lose, there's going to be an enormous sigh of relief on the part of many, many people who are in elected office in Washington. It may be a secret sigh of relief that they don't want anyone to hear, but I picked that up from
by Republicans, you mean?
By Republicans, and I've certainly heard that. A
secret sigh of relief from Republicans.
Right.
That's very interesting. I think that there is this moment in history where we are standing at a crossroads and we are looking to President Trump to try and see how the future of this country will move forward. Because as we saw in this election, even though President Trump lost the popular vote and lost the popular vote in the previous election as well, that there are so many Americans that felt like he was speaking to them and that they were a forgotten segment of American society. I'm wondering how you feel as a Republican who has been vocal about your opposition to President Trump, about where the Republican Party moves. Going back to that point that you made about a secret sigh of relief, there is still a lot of Americans that are looking for Republicans to do right by them, as well as Democrats.
Well, I think that's right. And my hope is that the Republican Party that I knew and loved and worked under from all the way from the 60s when I worked for Senator Javits of New York, all the way through my term in the Justice Department, my terms as governor, it was a fiscally conservative, socially welcoming big tent party, and felt that internationally it was important for the United States to project strength abroad, but that politics would stop at the water's edge, as Senator Vandenberg, who was chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, like Mr. Biden said. And if the Republican Party could return to looking something like that, I wouldn't have any concern about it whatsoever. And I know a bunch of people in the United States Senate, Republicans, who were a lot more moderate than they appear when they had to dance to the jig of, or felt they had to dance to the jig of Donald Trump. So my strong advice to the president, honest, sincere advice, would be to give politics a rest. If he continues to project negativity, I'm sure he's just going to engender negativity coming back in the other direction.
And there you've heard it.
Thank you so much for joining us.
First at Boo Boo News. My name is Tiffany, and I'm bringing this to you on a breaking story. Biden-Harris is the new elect. What do you think? Do you think that President Trump will take this to the Supreme Court? Do you think he'll win? Do you think he'll not win? Comment below and let me know what you think. All right, guys, stay blessed, not stressed. Until our next video.